Hey people, I want to talk about the annotated bibliography. So, annotated bibliographies take time. And I know that's one thing that most of you do not have. So, I'm going to try and make this as easy as possible. First, anything that said scavenger hunt, I have omitted. So, if something pops up and says scavenger hunt, just ignore it. I have omitted those two assignments and redone them so that we can spread the annotated bibliography out into 3 parts. And so for the first part, we are going to do one annotation to get started. And so let's talk about what an annotated bibliography is. This is basically a works cited page. Only with each citation, you are going to make an annotation that explains what is in this particular source. So you're going to develop out the works cited into what is called an annotated bibliography. And so I'm going to start by talking about the annotated bibliography here. And so we are working from the PIMA academic databases. And so for this, you need 6 credible sources. Now, for this assignment, 4 of the sources must be from the PIMA academic databases. And I've done a video on that, and we've talked about that before. So I know that a couple of people or some of you are doing something that might not have much research available. And I get that. And so you might not be able to find 4 from the databases, and that's okay. If you and I have talked about it, or if I can't help you find 4, then you're not responsible for 4. But if you're doing Poe or Ray Bradbury or Gilman or Chopin or any of the famous and mostly dead authors, then you should be able fairly easily to come up with 4 scholarly sources, 4 from the academic databases. I would expect that you'll use more than 6 sources total in the essay, but in this particular assignment, we're looking for 6. So the other 2 can come from Google, from any place, as long as they are credible sources. So let me show you what goes into an annotation, and then we'll look at a sample. So inside the annotation, you're going to, first it's going to start with the actual site that you would use in a works cited place. Again, I'll show you in a minute. Then there's going to be a paragraph that evaluates the source and or the author's credibility. So when we are in the academic databases, chances are they have already been vetted, meaning that the source is going to come out of Literary Reference Center, Literary Resource Center, Short Story Criticism. All of these sources have already been proved credible because these databases are using them. So you are not responsible for the author as much as the database that it comes out of. If you do happen to know the author, if that's available on there, if you can figure out who it is, that's fine, but it's not that necessary. So the focus is on what database did you get this out of? Where was this originally published, perhaps? So the first paragraph, which can be fairly short, is on the source and the credibility. You should probably put down the date, meaning that many of these would have been published. You don't have to worry about them being in the last 5 years, because if they're writing about Poe, it could have been published almost 100 years ago. Well, no, not 100. Okay, 50 years ago, and we would still consider it a credible source. Okay, paragraph 2 is going to be a summary of the main ideas of the article you're reading. What is going on in this article? And give me a summary of what's in this article. Paragraph 3, assess the usefulness of the source in relation to the research and the topic. In other words, how are you going to use this in your essay? How will it help your essay? What main idea does it support in your essay? The last one says analyzes the work in relation to other works cited. So if you're doing your first annotation, obviously you can't analyze it in relation to other works cited. So if this is your first citation, don't worry about it. But as you build on your annotations, then you could say this one also works with that one, or maybe this one refutes that one, or maybe this one supports another. In other words, or maybe one was written 50 years later than another, and so therefore new information has come to be found. Again, the total annotation should be about 150 words. And so I'm going to show you what one annotation looks like. Okay. So this is our OWL at Purdue that I'm using as a source. Now, different sources will have different formats. And even though they all say ML8, they'll still look different. So if you're using a different format, number one, be consistent. Make sure that it's all the same. But for right now, if you don't know what you're doing, I would just use this particular one that I'm giving you. Okay? So here is one sample annotation. So first we have the source. This would be the same thing we would put on a works cited page. This is a book, so it doesn't have a URL, but you would want to include the URL of your website. So again, this is going to come from your database because your database is already going to cite the source for you. Whatever you get from there is what you're going to put at the top. Then paragraph 1. Okay, so in this one, they're not talking about Lamont as much as they're talking about, let's say, about the overall book. And, or no, it's actually the overall, you notice that she puts the chapters, advice. This looks like an overall about the whole book. The next paragraph she has gives more specific details about what's in the book. And let's see. And this is how could it be actually used. Okay, so now this doesn't exactly follow my format, but it tells you what it looks like. So do you notice here that all of this is hanging indent? All of this is hanging indent, and this part is left justified. Again, I know there are going to be lots of different sources. They're going to look different, but we're going to use this as a sample for right now. So then there are spaces between the paragraphs here. For each paragraph gets its own space. Now, let's see. This one is APA. And APA looks pretty much the same except for in APA, of course, they format it differently here. And this one, they have a different hanging indent. I don't know. So anyways, this is one sample. Now I'm going to give you another one in a minute, but let me go back right now. And let's talk about, let's see what else I need to talk about here. Okay. There we go. Here's one annotation, what it looks like. Oh, I'm still on the same page. Let me see if I can get back. There we go. All right, so I've just done the information that you're going to need total 6, but for stage 1, you only needed 1. This will take you at least an hour to do. So unfortunately, but you get faster as you go along. So that's why you've only got one due. Next week, on Wednesday, November 10th, you're going to have 4 more annotations. That'll be 3 new ones and the one we did earlier. And we'll work on this. We'll actually be working on this one in class. And then the final is due on November the 19th. And that is all 6 annotations put into one overall page. Again, I will talk more about that as we go along. So that I'm going to stop right here. Okay, I'm going to stop right here. I got to cut that bottom part off. And